Welcome to Meet the Author, where you can join in on insightful conversations with best-selling and award-winning indie published authors. Your hosts today are Rob and Joan, who themselves are indie published authors, book publicists, and paranormal investigators with Tampa Bay Spirits, based in Tampa Bay, Florida. Thanks for dropping by. And now, on with the show.
Good evening to you.
Great. Who are you, by the way?
Oh, I'm Rob.
And I'm Joan.
What do you mean, who am I? You should know by now.
I should. Anyway, we're glad whether you're watching us live tonight or if you're listening to us later on the podcast, or if you're watching us live, well, recorded, but live. At another time. We already have some comments. We have Joe Conjal says, hi, Rob and Joan. Hello, Joe. Glad you're in the audience. And Robin Madrich says, hello, Rob and Joan.
Hey,
hello, Robin. How are you doing tonight? We're glad that you're both here. It's going to be a fun night.
Oh, Marjorie.
Oh, Marjorie's here. Marjorie Deering says, hi there. I'm sitting here enjoying coffee in my Tampa Bay Spirits.
Hey, it came.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
See, we weren't kidding.
It
came by Pony Express.
Yeah, it's a cute mug though, right? And Joy Shelton York says, hi, Rob and Joan. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Joy.
Glad that you're able to join us tonight too. Well, today, George Dismukes was on CJ's podcast and
Book World, The Great Escape.
And her co-host is going to be our guest tonight.
That's right.
So we've seen him
Scott Clifton
twice today.
Yeah.
If you missed that, then you need to watch it.
Check it out. The link is on Indie Book Source. I posted a post with it on there today.
Joe Conjal says he doesn't have his mug yet.
What?
Well, that takes time. Ask Marjorie.
Yeah, I think they were sending yours direct, I think. Because I told them how to do that.
I think so too.
Yeah, so that'll come directly, and it takes about 2 weeks or so.
And Marjorie says it is cute. It is really cute.
Yeah. So speaking of Voice of Indie podcast, which we weren't speaking of, but Voice of Indie podcast, right after this show, there at the end of our show, there's a little minute-long tutorial on how to get over to their podcast. It's hosted by Beam Weeks and Stephen Gary G's, both wonderful people.
Yeah. They
have a great show every Wednesday night. It's a call-in talk show.
Yep.
The podcast that you can call in and even ask questions of all the guests. Their guest tonight is author Joan Hall. Can you bring up the little
well, I could if I was
thing
on the right page. I'm not on brands. I'm on comments.
You'll get there, I'm sure.
All right, we're just
right there.
There we go.
There we go.
Here we are.
Boom, there it is. Joan Hall. That's tonight, immediately following our show. The only other things we have going on is this Saturday, episode Rewind, right where you're at right now, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, of course, here in the U.S. This Saturday's guest is Frank Ruffalo. That's this Saturday, March 4th. So that was a real good episode as well. So I think you'll enjoy it.
Marjorie Deering says, "Oh, it's worth the wait." She's sorry for you, Joe. It is worth the wait.
It is.
It's fun.
You can even hold off on your coffee until you get it.
And Rob designed the logo of our team and all the T-shirts and coffee mugs and stuff.
Yeah, so don't yell at me though if you don't like it.
No.
You
did a good job.
Next Wednesday, we won't be here in person, but we do have a wonderful new episode for you that we pre-recorded with an author who's in Australia, Paul Rushworth Brown. He's the author of Skullduggery and Red Winter Journey. He was born in England, moved to Canada when he was young, played pro soccer in the Canadian National Soccer League, and then he moved to Australia, where he lives currently. Mm-hmm. So he's really an interesting man.
Yeah, Yes.
And it's going to be a good show. That's next Wednesday, 7 o'clock, right here where you're at right now. Join us for that. Tonight we have with us another Texas author. How about that?
And another underground author's author.
And another ground author. He was a public educator for over 38 years. He is the co-host of the Book World, The Great Escape podcast with C.J. Peterson. And he's the author of the Conquest of the Veil series. So now that you know all about him, we're going to bring him in and he can tell you all about it again. Hi, Michael.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on
Thanks
the
for being
show.
here.
Yeah, Joe Conchal actually is an underground author too. He's in the audience.
Okay.
Yeah. Now Michael is an underground author, but he didn't write any of the books for the Magnolia.
Not in the Magnolia series. Right. But you were in the underground authors long before
they did the Magnolia Bluff
started.
series.
Yeah, we did a short story compilation, and
yes.
Yeah, and CJ was part of that, I think, as well. And just didn't have time to do the Magnolia series, but I've read a lot of good things about it. A lot of good authors are contributing to that series. I think they've been very successful. So
it's a really good series. We're really enjoying reading it as well.
Yeah, we are. It's been fun so far. All of them have been fun. It's been an interesting series and a great idea. Confusing as heck because we are now writing a book and trying to keep all of the characters in mind without using someone who's been killed off.
Now there's a gazillion characters, so it's like, oh boy.
At least
I need a computer.
Yeah, exactly.
At least we get to write the first book of the third season, so everybody after us will have to worry about who we killed off. I'm not going to tell you.
So, Mike, enough about us.
More about you.
Why don't you tell us how you got? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, as you saw a little bit in the bio, I was a public educator for 38 years. I was a teacher. I taught science. I was a basketball coach. And the last 17 years, I was an administrator. All 38 years, I spent at the same school, Chapel Hill ISD, which is near Mount Pleasant, Texas. Great school district. Loved it so much. After I retired, I ran for the school board. Now I'm on the school board there at Chapel Hill ISD. So, but I've always been a voracious reader. And I think it's probably no surprise that many, if not every author at one time started out as a reader. And I loved science fiction. I loved, a little bit more about myself before I slide off into that. My wife's name's Melanie. I have two children, Brett and Holly. Brett works for First Financial. He lives in Abilene. And my daughter Holly's a PTA. She's married, AJ Crisp. Our grandson will be 2 years old, March 8th, and we'll be celebrating his birthday a little early, March the 4th, because I go to the state basketball tournament every year, which is unfortunately the same week as Jason's birthday. Started writing about 12 or 13 years ago. And the reason I started writing was because I really love science fiction and fantasy, but it had evolved into something a little bit different than what I liked. And the books kept getting bigger and bigger, the size of doorstops, 600, 700, 800 pages long. Managed to make it through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series through the first 5 or 6 books. And I was done after that. Great series, but the stories that I grew up with, the science fiction and fantasy, which were really good stories, Robert Heinlein, Arthur C. Clarke, Andre Norton, all the greats that could tell a story. And it seemed to me like this fantasy genre, science fiction fantasy genre, of course, Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, had evolved into so much world building, which of course is crucial with fantasy. It's a huge, big part of it. It's probably the most important part, but that took over the story, and that became the story. So you would have 200 or 300 pages before you ever got to fleshing out characters and what the story arc was going to be. So I just stopped reading science fiction and fantasy. I actually expanded so now I read all sorts of genres, and it's helped me as an author because I've been able to take different genres with different authors and kind of combine that into this type of stories that I write. But I've always loved fantasy and science fiction. So long story short, I decided I would give it a shot. And this is a true story, believe it or not. I started writing with no formal training. And unfortunately, in college, I got a C- in English 1 and English 2. And let me tell you, I was thankful for the C-. Thankful for it. So with no formal training and, a so-so English literate person. And when I finished, I had an idea for a book. I wrote. I just sat down at the computer one day, and 6 months later, I had a 1 million word manuscript, 1 million word count manuscript. And I thought that's what all books were like. That's the size of most books. Yes. 1 million word count. And I started attending a local writers organization called Northeast Texas Writers Organization, started going to some writers conference. And I learned, much to my chagrin, that most science fiction and fantasy books range from 70 to 120,000 words in word count, which meant that I had enough material for 10 books.
Wow.
So I decided at that point that I needed to learn more about writing and about what it takes to produce a book. So I started attending the writers' conferences, the writers' meetings, and produced my first book, The Treasure Hunt Club, 12 years ago. And it was traditionally published through a publishing company. About that time, I'm sure you all recall, if you're an author or a writer, you certainly recall that the publishing industry was going through an upheaval. Brick and mortar bookstores are going out of business, and publishing companies are going bankrupt left and right, large, small, and in between. And mine was one of those. And it took me a couple of years to get the book back, and I republished it with Caleb Pirtle, who's also one of the Underground authors. Caleb was instrumental in helping me get my book back and then republishing it with a different book cover, ISBN, and of course, company name or same manuscript. Well, had to adjust the manuscript a little bit. And then nothing. I didn't write anything else until about 2017, because I was junior high principal. I was before that assistant principal, and junior high principal left me no time or much less energy to try to write. And so until I retired, which was in 2017, I did not write any books. But since that time, I've written 6 more, including a 4-book series called Conquest the Veil, and 2 additional standalone books, The Janus Witch and Edison Jones. And that has led me to Comic-Cons and various author shows, and going to lots of different book events across Texas and Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. And it's been fun. And it's been a wild ride so far.
Well, we have a couple of comments. Joe Conjal says, Rob, you'll have to read the series faster than this to keep up.
I guess so, right?
Yeah. But Michael, he also has a question for you. Hi, Michael. Big question of the night. Plotter or pantser?
I am 110% a pantser. I have a general idea of a story. I have a general idea of the characters. I have a general idea of the beginning and ending, and everything in between is subject to change. I go where the thoughts and story takes me. And so 100%, like 110% pantser. I don't think I could do it the way, and I've got a lot of author friends who are or plotters, planners, and I can't do that.
I've got a quick question. Do you use the computer, or do you handwrite everything?
No, I've used a computer.
Okay.
Even in my 1 million word count, the thing, when I finished that 1 million word count monstrosity, that's a good question, Rob, because I didn't realize another true story. This is another part of that true story. I didn't realize till I printed it out, and I had a 5-inch binder.
Oh my goodness!
Okay, like this, and then I step back and I go, that don't look right.
That's enough for a series, though. Just break it in.
Yeah, that's right. You use it for a ship anchor is what you could have used it for.
Actually, we have a question about that. Joyce Shelton York says, "What did you do with the 1 million word story?"
That is a very good question, and the answer is, I decided I had to learn more about writing. And so, as I said, I started going to writers' conferences, attending regularly the writer organization meetings that we had here. And I decided that at first I was going to chunk the whole thing, because then what are you going to do with 1 million words? Okay. Yeah. But then I decided, man, I spent too much time and effort on that.
Yeah.
But I went back and I decided I had to write other books first. So I wrote The Janus Witch, and I wrote Edison Jones. And then I came back and I condensed that 1 million word manuscript into the Conquest of the Veil series, which was 4 books.
Oh, that was a good idea.
And it was not easy. And I certainly don't recommend anybody following that kind of path. It was hard.
It was
but
hard.
I think the end result,
I'm sure. Well, Marjorie Deering says, "I don't know, but it seems to me that formal training in the area of writing takes away from individual style, unless we're talking about pure mechanics." I agree.
Yeah, I think so, because I think every single author, every single writer was a reader first.
Yes.
And you know what you like to read.
Yes.
And you know the type of writing style you like to read from authors. And you instinctively adopt those, I believe, into the way that you write. You're taking what you like to read and translating it into books that you like to write. So I think sometimes, actually, this is the difference again between planners and pantsers, and I'm not casting dispersions on either kind of writer, but I think sometimes that the formal education, like I've had teachers, okay, let me put it this way. I hired teachers for years to teach at school, and of course we always tried to hire the best teachers. As a general rule, not always, but a general rule, those teachers that were straight A students in the subjects that they taught sometimes struggled to reach students because they could not understand the problems that they were going through, say in math or in English or something like that. And some of the best teachers I ever hired were those that struggled in the subject themselves because they knew what the kids did not. And I think sometimes your formal education, if you're really brilliantly into English and grammar, that sort of, how do I put this? That outweighs a good story because you're so interested, maybe not deliberately on the mechanics of it, that you forget that the story is the most important thing. And I don't know if Caleb Pirtle is listening, but Caleb told me this once, and I've never forgot it, what he said. But he told me once when I was with the Treasure Hunt Club, when he helped me pull that out of the out of bankruptcy from the bankrupt publishing company, and I was discouraged because of the mistakes that I'd made in writing it. And he said, "Mike, it's a good story." He said, That's the most important thing you have to worry about. A good story is the most important thing. You can fix the commas in the wrong place and the wrong capitalization or punctuation, but you can't fix a bad story. And I've never forgot that.
He's
that's
right.
So true.
Now, Robin said she agrees with Marjorie about the formal training. And Joe Conjal says life experience is an education in itself. Chris Chrisman said, good evening,
Hi,
all.
Chris.
I'm late. The internet was down. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think too that when we first started writing, and we've written books that we've never published, okay? And what I had a lot of trouble with is my kids used to call me the grammar Nazi when they were growing up. Because grammar was really important to me. And I had trouble with that because when you try to write dialogue that you would actually hear or relate to, isn't grammatically correct. So that was something I had to overcome because it comes off as stiff and stilted if you're always using absolutely correct grammar.
Right. We have come to the time where we need to take our first break. When we come back, we're going to start talking about your books.
Yeah, we'll bring up the covers and all that kind of stuff.
Get our book giveaway going and all that good sort of stuff too, although this has been fascinating.
Yes.
Hang on just a minute, about 3 minutes, you guys. Nobody go away, okay?
Don't go away. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Perfect.
Mystery hovers in the Magnolia Bluff Public Library. It has nothing to do with the hundreds of suspense novels on its shelves. Caroline McCluskey is the librarian. She finds a crimson hat and a black and white poodle puppy. They belong to Esther Williams. Esther is missing. The police can't find her. Neither can the FBI. Esther's only hope is a ring of 3 women investigators who form the Round Table. The Round Table has already solved one mystery in town, but this time, a woman's life is at stake. The Doggone Diamond Dilemma is now available on Amazon.
They thought the siren was dead. In the novel, Siren Song, by author George Dismukes, James Harmon shot her twice. Several people saw her dead body sinking slowly into the abyss. But now, in Siren Song 2, evidence suggests that she may still be alive.
She killed that boatload of people. It was her! And she's just getting started!
Angie, that's impossible.
The cold chill up my spine tells me it's not impossible. We've got to start all over again. And this time, do it right.
Siren Song 2. The story continues. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Get your copy today.
It's a murder scene. Like many others, except the prime suspect is a beautiful woman from Detective Ray Schiller's past. Ray is determined to help her, but at what cost? Targeting him for his interference, the killer threatens all Ray holds dear. He's given terms and a deadline he can't possibly meet. Run, Ray, run. Watch the past come back with a vengeance in Targeted. Don't miss a second. Order now.
And we're back.
Welcome back. We have a quick comment from Marjorie Deering. She said, here's a short quote unquote major edit story. Deer Crossing, my debut Ray Schiller novel in my mystery police procedural series, began as a sci-fi story. Huh? It's true, I swear. That was a big change.
No kidding.
Almost
That's a major edit, right?
That's a major edit. Though she didn't have to deal with 1 million words.
That's true. But I still say you could have broken it up into a 4-book series.
Yeah.
That's what he did.
Never thought of that.
Oh, ha, ha, ha. He's so funny. Well, let's go through your books here. And there are quite a few of them.
All right.
Here we have The Open Portal.
Now, that's the first one in the Conquest of the Veil series. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Now, did you just say this came from the 1 million word?
It did. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Can you describe the book cover to those that are just listening?
The book cover of the book.
Yeah.
Well, the book cover, I like custom-made book covers, and a lady named Jaya Hears, who is a cover artist from London, England, is the one that did the book cover. She does original artwork for books, and she's done several of my covers, and she did The Open Portal. The Open Portal is the first book in the Conquest of the Veil series. It's very much a coming-of-age story. The main character is a 18-year-old bullied teenage girl. She's a high school senior, and unfortunately, an all too familiar story nowadays is she has reached the point where she's decided to commit suicide. But before she can carry out the act, her guardian angel appears to her, which is kind of a well-worn trope. But I modeled my guardian angel after the butler in Arthur. He's very rude and condescending, but he offers her a chance to swap her life with someone else. Doesn't tell her anything else, just that. And she decides, why not? It's got to be better than my life now. So she takes him up on it. And the next day she wakes up to find that she's on a parallel world of Earth where technology has been replaced by magic. But best of all, she discovers that she is transformed from a rather plain-looking young lady to a stunningly beautiful woman with servants and riches. So in her mind, she has won the lottery. Her wildest dreams have come true until the other shoe drops, and she discovers that her guardian angel did not tell her the most important detail or fact of all. And that is, on this parallel world of Earth called Meredith, there is a partition of magic called the Veil, which divides the world into a good side and an evil side, and she's on the wrong side.
Uh-oh.
And it's told, it was what I would consider to be epic or high fantasy. A story, epic fantasy, is told over the course of 4 books. She meets and falls in love with a young prince who is a damaged individual, equally as bad as she is. But the fact of the matter, but oddly enough, the pieces of their personality, each that's missing, the other one seems to fill. So it's a good fit, but it's told again over 4 different books. And again, it's I would consider it to be high fantasy, epic fantasy. If you like Tolkien type stories, it has very much that kind of twist, but it does start out in a contemporary setting. And a lot of my books do. And there's a reason for that. I like to appeal not just to people who read fantasy and science fiction, but to those who have never read a science fiction or fantasy book before. And my hook to them in this contemporary setting is to start off with characters everybody, regardless of genre, can relate to from the jump. And the story starts from the jump. The world building comes, but it's not necessarily the first thing that does. And it doesn't overshadow the story. So I've tried to write the books that I have that are science fiction and fantasy in a way that someone, again, to repeat myself, has never read a fantasy book in their life would enjoy the book and the story.
So my question then is, have you had any feedback from any of your readers to find out if they had never been interested in science fiction but found your books and decided they liked it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing this now for, like I said, since about 2017.
Yeah.
And last was going along pretty good till COVID. Then COVID hit. We all know everything came to a grinding halt. But since then, I've been to so many book events. I've been to a lot of Comic Cons, and I have received tons of feedback, both in person, but people who have bought and read my books, as well as online and reviews and things. And so I think that I'm satisfied and I'm happy with the feedback that I've been getting. And I think I did what I set out to do. Now, does that mean I'll be a best-selling author or another Stephen King? I don't know. And to be honest with you, not that I don't care, but that's the way I like to write, and which I feel is my niche, if you want to call it that, the my style of writing, so to speak.
Well, Chris Chrisman says he loves the concept, and through 3 other comments, he said, how much time do they spend in the normal world before shifting to the magical world? Meaning, how many chapters do you use to hook them before shifting? He's just curious, he says.
Interesting, because I flip-flop. So in the Conquest of the Veil series, in book 1, The Open Portal, you will be about a third the way through the book before we change worlds. Okay, before the main character finds herself on Meredith. But when you go back to one of my standalone novels, The Janus Witch, we start off in a medieval setting and very much with a coven of witches who are, long story short, or 30-second elevator pitch really quick. We start in a medieval setting with a coven of witches, vicious, murderous coven of witches, which are tracked down one day by a group of witch hunters who are intent on killing them. So to escape, the witches create a portal of magic, but before they can complete the spell, one of the witches is killed by one of the witch hunters, and the portal spins out of control. And that leaves the remaining witches with the daunting choices of either certain death or to take their chances on the out-of-control portal. So they decide, obviously, we'll take our chances with the portal, which then slingshots them through time to present-day East Texas.
Interesting.
So now into a contemporary setting. And the main witch, Tresselane, suffers complete amnesia because she's critically injured to the point she's lost all memory of her previous life. And when she recovers, she falls in love with a young man who's the exact opposite of the way she used to be. He's kind and compassionate.
Interesting.
And so it's kind of a love story as well as a science fiction, fantasy, and action. But I flip-flop. I start off in the traditional fantasy setting, medieval kind of world, and then we end up in the contemporary world. And then in another novel, we start off in the contemporary world and we end up in the fantasy world. So there's a hook either way. It's whether it's hooked at the beginning or hooked somewhere in between, it's still the hook.
Joy Shelton York said, I admire you sticking to what you feel right for your vision. And she also says, your writing has to be authentic to you. And I agree. And Joe Conjal says, are there any hints along the way that the book is going to, in a sense, change genre part of the way through?
Well, if I'm like in the Open Portal, it is strictly, it is high epic fantasy. So, I can see where that question would come from, in the sense that when you start reading the book at first, you don't really know that's the direction that it's going to, because it's like, okay, bullied teenage high school senior. Okay, very much a 21st century on Earth in the United States, in Texas kind of problem. So the hint comes when her guardian angel appears to her. So I kind of do breadcrumbs, just sort of leave the breadcrumbs along so that the reader follows them up to the point where, you switch worlds, or you switch into a fantasy vision, or from a fantasy to a contemporary setting.
Chris Chrisman says, I do love portals that are not normal. Now I have to read your books.
Good.
That's the point, right?
Right.
Let's so the second book in the Veil series is Escape from Wheel, right?
Right.
That is, and then the third one is A Witch's Brew.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then the fourth one, and is this the final in the series? Cavern of the Veil Queen.
Yes.
All right. And now, is that a final of the 4 books? Or are there plans for a 5th?
So the answer to that is, oddly enough, yes and no. So in my standalone books, I have 3 standalone novels. I'm working on a 4th, and I have 4 books in the Conquest of Veil series. So I have a character. If you remember, I don't know, was it a TV series or movie series called Tales from the Crypt?
Oh, yeah.
And you had the Crypt Keeper,
Yep.
right? That introduced each episode.
Yep.
For my standalone novels, I have an eccentric, kind of unique and oddities, antiques owner who's a dwarf, a little person. But he kind of reminds me of Tyrion, if you know the image Tyrion in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
But he is like the crypt keep. He sort of fills the crypt keeper role, in that he's the introduction. He's the link of each story. He's not the story, but he's the link that gets the story rolling, if that makes sense.
I gotcha. Now,
So-
Edison Jones, that's your first standalone?
No, the first standalone was the Treasure Hunt Club.
Okay, here we go. The Treasure Hunt Club.
Treasure Hunt Club.
And then the Janus Witch.
And the Janus Witch.
Okay, so I just have these backwards. And then Edison,
and Edison Jones, which is my sci-fi book, and it is a YA novel. The main character is a 12-year-old 7th grader, and y'all may recall back, when I was growing up, there was a book series similar to the Hardy Boys called Tom Swift.
Yeah.
And it was about a young genius inventor who invented cool stuff and went on cool adventures.
Yeah.
So my 21st century version of that, which has been out of print now for 40 or 50 years, is Edison Jones. And because I taught science for 21 years, I've sprinkled science facts in it, even though it's
That's
a work
good.
of fiction. So when kids read it, they actually learn a little bit about science.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that is the short story compilation.
From the Underground Authors
Beyond
Beyond
the
the Sea. Okay. All right. I think we've got that now. I think
You're up to speed?
I'm up to speed. We have 2 comments. Let's see. Oh, yes. Joe Conjal said beautiful covers. They are really
Very
beautiful
nice
covers.
Yeah.
And Chris Chrisman said he loved Tom Swift. Yeah. Yes. Well, shall we get to where we can reach you and how we can reach you in the book giveaway?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Or do
And
we
then
need
we'll break?
And then we'll break?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. You know what? We never put the ticker up this whole
there
time.
we go. Now we know who you are.
Sorry about that. Okay. Now, this is very easy. This is his website, and you'll see almost everything he does is very similar. His website is michaelscottclifton.com. And I'll spell it this time, and then you're on your own, folks who are just listening. MichaelScottClifton. MichaelScottClifton.com. Of course. His Facebook is author MS Clifton. His Twitter is author MS Clifton.
Detecting a thread here.
Yeah, I do. I'm too. Instagram is author MS Clifton. There's a theme.
It is.
And LinkedIn is author MS Clifton.
This is like a series.
You can find him on YouTube under Michael Scott Clifton.
That's the curveball.
No, here comes the real curveball.
Oh, yeah.
His email. msclifton955@gmail.com.
Okay, and I hope everybody's fingers are poised and ready to go on the computer keyboard.
Chris Chrisman, you said you wanted to read his books. Here's your chance to do at least one of them free.
The giveaway. The first 3 people to email msclifton955@gmail.com will win an ebook copy of choice. And then you can buy all the other ones.
I'm right.
Isn't that a great idea?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But they're all standalone. You don't need to write even your series.
Well, the series are, no, they're in chronological order.
Okay, so you should read the first one first.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Try to read those in order. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The open portal first, and but there are a number of, standalone books that you can read too.
Chris says, stick with the same name for everything. Nice. It is nice. It's really, most of us did not do that. We did not have the foresight to do that. Okay.
No, we didn't.
Not at all.
We didn't.
Ours are all over the map.
Oh, yes.
No one can follow the breadcrumbs. I think what we're going to do now is take our second and last break, and then we'll come back and talk about the future with Mr. Clifton.
And we will keep up the email, and we're going to take them off first.
We're going to take the email down for a minute, but it's still in the banner. So, okay, so we're going to take a short, our last break here now, and we shall be back in just a moment. So
after another word from our sponsors.
Don't go away.
First, there was Siren Song, then Siren Song 2. Now comes The Siren Hunter, a continuing saga about Angie Holland and her never-ending battle with the mythological denizens that are not even supposed to exist. Is The Siren Hunter a conclusion to the undersea horror? Only the sirens know for sure.
The Siren Hunter, now available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites. Or contact this podcast. The trilogy is complete.
People who like to read want to get their hands on books by Becca Jones.
Becca Jones, the breakthrough author who tells it like it is. It takes courage to tell a story when it reveals dark secrets. Becca Jones delves deep into the hidden world of sexual abuse. She tells what happened and also tells how she survived.
Meant to Be is much more than just entertaining. Meant to Be gives you a point of reference, hope to cling to, and becomes a guide for survival if you have suffered the same thing. Meant to Be, Becca Jones, a must-have.
Meant to Be is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and many other bookseller websites.
Madison Jackson loved being a cop. A young girl is raped and murdered near Burnett Reservoir. Madison vows to get justice for the child. Madison travels to the heart of Mexican cartel country. She is kidnapped, tortured. Will Madison ever make it home? Justice by Kelly Marshall, only at Amazon.com.
And we're back again.
Yes, and let me put up that website again.
The email.
The email. I meant the email. Here we go.
Right there.
So here's the email if you would like to win a free book from Mike. any one of those books. They all sound really good.
Yeah, even if you're listening to this podcast later or watching it later than the live broadcast, go ahead and drop him an email. He'd love to hear from you anyway, especially if you're interested in his books, and maybe he's got a few copies left. You never know whether they're all going to be given away. Right?
Yeah, it's worth a try.
It's worth a shot. Right? And you do like to hear from your potential readers, don't you?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And
sure
readers.
Do. And actual readers, yeah. Current readers.
Remember, if you read a book and you like the book, please leave a review.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So what's coming up, Mike, on your drawing board there?
Wait a minute. Chris Chrisman says authors love to hear from readers. That is the absolute truth.
That is.
What is coming up?
Well, I'm working on my 8th book. It's called Pringle Prawn. Pringle, Pringle, Prawn, Prawn, which is a fairy who meets and falls in love with a human. So which it's a lot more involved in that, but it'll be my 4th standalone book. And
so it's not nonfiction, is it?
Yeah, I try. I struggled to put that fiction part in there, but so having a lot of fun writing this one. I spent the last 2 or 3 years finishing Conquest of Ellen. As you might imagine, reducing a 1 million word count manuscript to 4 books was, well, for me anyway, it was no easy task. So, and I learned also about series books that each subsequent book gets a little harder to write because you have to keep up with all of the places and all of the people, hair color, eye color, all of that. And when you get to that 4th and last book, I was using the 3 other books kind of like you would reference books. Oh, I remember, what is the name of that person? And just going back. But bring it on. I'm good for about a book a year. And so it'll be probably released sometime this summer, July or August. And anyway, I start going to quite a few comic cons beginning in the summer. Generally, the only book events that I go to, there's 1 or 2 comic cons, but I go to mostly local events, art walks, wine festivals, book clubs, things like that are within easy distance of where I live. And then my wife and I start traveling to the comic cons beginning in the summer, and those are always fun, although it is rather tiring because we usually have to travel a pretty long way.
Yeah. Do you go to the California one?
No, I generally try to stay within Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, although I'll be going to a Mississippi Comic-Con in Mississippi this time around. It's funny because Texas is so big that actually I can go most of the places in Oklahoma and Arkansas and Louisiana and even Mississippi are closer than a lot of the Comic-Cons that they have in Texas.
There you go.
So, it's kind of we try to drive. And so 5 hours, 6 hours tops is about what we kind of limit ourselves with in terms of the Comic-Cons that we'll go to and attend.
Sounds good. Robin Madrich agreed with you and Chris saying that authors love to hear from readers. And Marjorie Daring wants to know, how do you decide on your characters' names? Do you have a method?
Well, being a pantser, I definitely don't have a method. The names just sort of, I don't know, it's hard to explain. They kind of pop into my head. And, cool. I'm kind of like a cow. I'll masticate on it for a while. And if I got a kind of an idea of the personality of the person and the name fits the personality, then I'll go to it. If I'm really stuck for characters, what I used to do is my wife and I would go to North Park Mall in Dallas, which is very rich people. And I'll sit and I'll people watch. You can get inspiration after about 5 minutes there. for a character. So yeah, mall watching is a good place. If you're ever stuck on characters and names, go to the mall and sit and watch those people.
So let me guess. I'm just going to take a wild guess here, but perhaps you were eating chips like Pringles when you named your new book.
Well, maybe he was eating prawns.
Or maybe prawns. And
actually the chip is called Pringles with an
yes.
S.
That's true.
So a prawn is a shrimp.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Okay, is prawn. So Pringle prawn sort of went with the title. One of my critique partners, we got like 6 on our group. He doesn't call they're critiquing, my material now. We do it 2 or 3 chapters at a time, and he doesn't call her Pringle. He calls her potato chip.
Well, I think it's a great title. It's something some people will remember. I think it's awesome.
So Chris said, I missed the answer, but is Michael indie or traditional?
Started off as traditional, but now I'm definitely indie, and for a number of reasons, not the least of which, and I'm sure y'all as well, know a lot of authors who have publishers, traditional publishers even now, and agents. And I've yet to meet an author who's happy with their agent. I'm sure there's some out there. And most of them complain that most of the ones I know anyway, are complaining that they're only getting about a 30 to 35% royalty, yet they're still having to do 80 to 90% of the PR and all of that. So I went through that with the other publishing company. And if I'm going to have to do all the work and carry all the water, then I should get the majority of the royalties. And that's the way I feel about it.
And
that's the way we do too.
Yep.
Chris Chrisman says, will you be in Kansas City? I assume he's talking about Kansas City Comic-Con.
No, like I said, we generally try to stay within a 6-hour radius of Mount Pleasant where I live. We're expanding a little bit. Like I said, we're going to a Comic-Con in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi this time. I think that's in June. And, but it's, those things generally last 2 to 3 days. And when you count the travel, it's quite a bit of traveling. And if I were 21 years old again, maybe, that would be okay. But
a lot of things would be different, wouldn't they?
Oh, sure would. Yeah.
Joe Conchel says you need to keep a series Bible. It'll save your life. What is now series Bible? I'm not sure what that is. To keep track of all your characters and what they've done.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Who they are and what they've done and what they didn't do.
Characteristics and all that stuff.
What they
that
look
is true.
like
I said, I had to have the previous 3 books. By the time I got to the 4th and last book, literally was going through and leafing through. Okay, what was the name of that person again?
Yeah, exactly, right.
So yeah, that's a good idea.
So Joyce Shelton, New York says shrimp on chips.
Yummy.
Yeah. Or chips on shrimp. I mean, I don't know.
They don't do that in Indiana, Joy.
So Chris Chrisman said, wow, so it doesn't make sense to do traditional. Yeah, well, I'm telling you, if you remember, Chris, we've had New York Times bestsellers here that have all kinds of agents and stuff, and they're still out there having to do all their own publicity. It's crazy to me. We have another comment. George Dismukes.
Dismukes
says, this
Hi,
damn
George.
thing working now? George has been listening to the whole show and has been having trouble getting his questions onto the air.
So, George, now's the time. You only got a few minutes left to come up with some good questions. Don't ask him to repeat the show.
But, George, we told everyone that you were on CJ. Did I say CJ?
Yeah, CJ.
Yeah, CJ's show, and Michael is, of course, the co-host. So
Book World: The Great Escape.
Yeah, and we
so 1 o'clock on. Is it every Wednesday, Michael?
Yes, at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah.
1 o'clock Central Standard Time.
Right.
Yeah, we posted a link to it on our on George's page actually.
Yeah, and on Indie Book Source. Too,
on Indie Book Source, yep.
Yeah.
George Dismuke says, "Hi, Mike. Good time today."
Well, thank you, George.
It was a really good interview, I thought.
Yeah. You're
I enjoyed it.
Interesting and a lot of fun.
It was.
It sure is.
Yes, he is. Joe Conjal said, "You should come to Heroes Aren't Hard to Find in Charlotte at least once. It's awesome."
We'll go there.
Oh, yeah, we can go there, Joe.
We're not heroes, though.
You just need to, let us know when it is.
Yeah.
We could come up. That'd be fun. And Heroes Aren't Hard to Find sounds like it's like, Marvel and DC and stuff like that. But
yeah.
Am I right or am I wrong? You can tell us.
Right.
Joyce Shelton York's a great show. Did you mean the show that George was on this afternoon or this one? Joe Conjal said, "You are right." That's what I thought. Do you have do you do a book signing there, Joe?
So, Mike, what kind of advice do you have for somebody who's just getting started writing?
A would-be writer.
A newbie.
Well, believe it or not, I get asked, and I'm sure you all do the same, these many book events and Comic-Cons at least once, sometimes 2 or 3 times, I get asked that. And down through the years, I've kind of given different answers, but I think I've come to the point where I think that the best answer I can give is finish what you start. Because so many of them tell me they go to a certain point and they just, they stop. And you have to finish if you're going to, well, I've got the story and I've got to this point and that's, and they just run into a brick wall or something. But almost all of them have never, almost all of them have started a story, started writing a book. Very few of them ever finish it. And until you finish the story, there's not much you can do until you reach that point. And I go back to, again, what Caleb Pirtle says. You can fix the other stuff. You can fix the grammar. You can fix the misplaced commas. You can fix the POV, problems. But you can't fix a bad story. You have to, you get the story, you finish it, and then from that point on, go to writers' conferences, join. Right here in rural East Texas, we have 3 different writers' organizations within a 60-mile radius of each other. So if we got 3 different writers' organizations where y'all live in Tampa, and I'm sure any other metropolitan place, I'm sure there are a number of writers' organizations, many of whom Zoom since COVID, which means you don't have to physically be present in the room.
Right.
And that's how you learn the nuts and bolts of it. You do first, and then you listen to what other experienced authors have done, and then you correct what you've already put forth. So finish what you start. That would be my best advice.
Joyce Shelton York says, "So true. They start criticizing themselves and lose confidence, and that's why they don't finish." But also, I think there are some stories that I know that I've been working on one that's just a bear, and I've probably been working on this particular book for 10 years at least. And it's a book about Jezebel, but from a different viewpoint than maybe we've heard about Jezebel. And the wanting to be authentic is bogging me down and not really understanding the Phoenician lifestyle that well and trying to find that.
Too bad we can't time travel.
And this is where I have a little problem with being a little OCD is wanting it to be accurate, because really when you think about it, if I don't know what the heck Phoenicians live like, probably most people don't, right? However, I don't want people to read the story and get knocked out of the story because there's such glaring problems with the way I've presented the book. you know? So I think sometimes it's stuff like that too. That's Chris Chrisman said, write the book, finish and write the next book better. There is a learning curve.
Yeah.
For real.
Oh,
yeah.
That's true.
Good time.
Yeah. I agree.
All right. Well, I think we're coming to the end here. And
yeah, it's been an hour already, people. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
That went
by quick.
It did go by quickly. My goodness. It was really fun and interesting. George Dismukes says Jezebel. No.
Just put the name of Deborah. Thank you, George. Now we can find her and figure out what happened. Robin says, great show. Thanks all. And Chris says, thanks for another great show. Thanks, Michael. I enjoyed the podcast. My
Marjorie Deering.
That's good. I hope you had a chance to refill it during the show.
That was Marjorie Deering. Yeah.
So
we enjoyed this podcast.
Thank you, Michael. And maybe when we get to Texas, we'll be able to say hi in person.
That'd be awesome. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. We're going to move you over to the side. Stay right where you're at until we come back to you. You'll be off the air at that point.
Okay.
Don't fall off the edge of the stage, though. There we go. Whoop. Oh, you stopped just in time. That's good. All righty. That was good.
It was really a fun show.
Yeah, it was. Want to remind everybody, next week is Paul Rushworth Brown, Australian author. That is a pre-recorded new episode, but it's a really good episode. So make sure you watch and then support Paul, and he's going to have a book giveaway and everything. And you'll want to get a copy of one of his books for sure. The week after that, on the 15th, will be our next live presentation. It is our 100th episode celebration.
We've been on the air for more than 2 years now, you guys. And
which is crazy.
We're going to have a bunch of authors back.
5 people that during this last year were significant. We have so many that are significant.
Yeah.
It's really hard to pick, but
let me say this. George Dismukes said really enjoyed the part of the show that he got to see.
I'll send you the link. You can watch the whole thing tomorrow at your leisure or during the night at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're trying to sleep.
Yeah. You want to tell people who's going to be on that show?
Yeah. Marjorie Deering, Tori Gates, Jamil Effent, Genaro Torres, and Douglas Gardam.
Yeah, those were all really great.
Well, good shows and had a lot of downloads. A lot of people downloaded their episodes during the year. So
we've now had, for those of you watching and listening, more than 20,000 just downloads of the podcast. Never mind how many people we've had viewing the live and then the repeat view of the vodcast. So
right. So it's continuing. It's not too long ago we told you we went past the 10,000 mark. That was in December, I think. And we're already over 20,000.
Just gone.
So it's like exponentially growing, which is really cool. So, and
Chris
also
Christmas said awesome about the podcast. And what we like is that it's great for the podcast, but it's also great for the authors that they're getting out there and seeing so many, their books are getting out there. One of the first authors that we ever interviewed was on another podcast. We were asked to bring on an author and interview them on someone else's podcast. So we did that. It was Cindy Smith. We've never been able to get her to be on our podcast. She's a poet, and she's a really good poet. And we would love to have her on this show, but she just sent me a birthday card, and that was 2 years ago, and she never misses a birthday or a holiday.
Cindy J. Smith.
I just want to give a shout out to Cindy. And all of our authors are that amazing and wonderful and kind and good.
I must give a heartfelt apology to Joe Conjal because he's written down number 1, but somehow he is going to be on the 100th episode as well. He just texted me and said, Am I still on there? Yeah, you are, Joe.
Joe, so sorry.
Oh my God, I'm very sorry. But somehow somebody, I think my dog got the eraser on the pencil and kind of went off to the side there. But yes, Joe, we expect you to be here. Everybody wants you to be here.
Another awesome show and another awesome person. I just can't even begin to thank all of you so much for all your kindness and participation.
Right.
For the last 100 interviews. When you're in the audience, it makes the show better also.
Yes,
love
everyone's
your comments.
contributing. It's great.
It is.
So
love it.
Stay tuned now at the end of the show here. If you're trying to get over to the Voice of Indie podcast,
we'll tell you how to get there.
And the first thing we're going to have is the
Joe Gonjo said thanks. Yes, well, you are written down as number one.
The first thing we're going to show is the instructions on how to get there. Then we'll have our sign out. And everyone, thank you so much for showing up. And until next time.
That's all, folks. Good night.
Live every Wednesday, your Voice of Indie hosts Beam Weeks and Stephen G's welcome authors, musicians, publishing industry pros, artists, and assorted creative guests for an exciting interactive hour. Call in during the show or post questions and comments on Twitter for responses in real time. Meet your favorite indie creators, learn inside tips, network, and promote your work. The link for each week's show is pinned on Twitter atop @VoiceOfIndie. And you can receive the link every Wednesday morning in your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter at freshinkgroup.com. Check out Voice of Indie every Wednesday on Blog Talk Radio and catch hundreds of episodes archived everywhere from our websites to our YouTube channel and Spotify.
Thank you for joining us here on Meet the Author. Make sure you stay up to date with our show by clicking like, follow, and share. And you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, and more. See you next time on WLFE-DB